I'll be honest, some days I feel like I'm playing a really bad game of Jumanji because, last week we had hurricanes. This week we've got biolabs exploding.
Yeah,
Like, what's next?
like
Locusts? Like, what are we doing here? It's really good to see you guys. Man,
good to see you.
I got to tell you, this week was so refreshing to me. After, we're in week 6 of a 7-week series, The Churches. And this week was the week of Philadelphia. And we've been, in the past few weeks, pretty challenged. I think Pastor Johnson referred to it as getting spanked on the bottom.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
Jesus?
Yeah. Oh, Jesus spank.
Yeah, the good old Jesus spank. That's
I
wild.
have no comments.
Well, but this week was really encouraging to me personally. I needed it. We've talked about the sleepy church, the church that slept with Jezebel, and so on and so forth. And if I'm being totally honest, I have a little bit related to all of the churches that we've talked about so far, and which is wild, that I could find myself in that place to identify with 6 completely different churches and how Jesus was talking to them. But this week, I've specifically found it encouraging because the Church of Philadelphia was the smallest one. They didn't have resources. They had poor social status. They didn't have a lot to give. They didn't have the influence. And especially today in an influencer society, I can get so caught up in thinking about what's my legacy? Who am I influencing? What am I doing? But to hear the Lord talk to the Church of Philadelphia, and it says, Jesus says, red letters, I know that you have little strength, yet you have kept my word and you have not denied my name. That to me is so life-giving and permission-giving to continue the work, right? And I do get so discouraged, like I'm not doing enough. And I'm just curious if you can relate to the Church of Philadelphia in that feeling weak or like you lack influence. So tell me about a time that you felt weak and that you had to lean into God's strength.
So this morning.
Love it. That's real. Same though.
No, man, I'm such a perfectionist. So I be trying to do everything right and feeling like I know everything. I want to walk in every meeting, every room, equipped, ready. Even when we came in here, I was joking because I seen you had your notes out, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm about to leave because I'm not ready." And that's just me in life, I feel like if I'm not prepared, then I can't be used. But that's not God's story. He's like, "No, I sent you there, so you gonna do it or you gonna run, Jonah?" And I was just like, "Oh, my bad. I didn't know you was gonna get under my skin." Mm-hmm. So, and that's typically every day for me. So,
yeah,
that's
good. What about you, Isaiah?
I think the first thing that came to mind was when you asked that question was like when I first started leading worship here at Victory. I felt like just because it's such a, there's so much excellence and there's such this it feels like there's so much to live up to. I felt like there was no way that I could, I guess, meet that. And I felt weak. I felt helpless just in the fact of me kind of looking inward instead of focusing on the Lord. And so I just felt, I don't know, it reminded me the same thing at the end of that scripture when he says, in your weakness, or when you're weak, then you're strong. Mm-hmm. Being able to know, because feeling similarly, wanting to, I don't know, have this perfection mindset and feeling like I need to, I don't know, live up to something. But just, I guess, being able to rest in the fact that when my weakness is showing, that's when the Lord's strength can be revealed even more within me.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Mm-hmm. How about you, Alex?
Yeah, it's so funny that we were talking about just today, because I'm thinking back to a conversation I had earlier today. And I don't know about you guys, but sometimes I'm having a conversation with someone and they're seemingly coming to me with questions, but then they seem like they're more informed and better equipped. And then in my head, I'm like, you're coming to me with questions. You know a lot more about this than I do. And then, you kind of feel like, okay, am I even equipped to like speak into this person? Am I equipped to even, share my story? And through that, I am able to kind of rest in knowing like, okay, God's going to use me for his glory and whatever that looks like. And I may not feel like I'm equipped to do it, but I'm a firm believer that God is putting us in those situations and in those spaces to have influence, even when it seems like we're not having influence. And so I try to go into those conversations bravely, but it can be intimidating when I feel like, okay, I should know more about this and I don't. But I'm just trusting that the Holy Spirit is saying what needs to be said in those moments, whether I realize it or not, and that God is going to do the work, because it's impossible for us to know everything and be experts on everything. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah, that's good. For me, it's hard to reconcile the difference between giving my best, my first fruits, giving my all to the Lord, and actually trying. And I'm a perfectionist too, and I hate it. But he, like you brought up Jonah, but Pastor Johnson brought up Gideon and David, and even defeating Goliath with a slingshot. What? Because we can boast in his strength when we know if we could take the credit for ourselves, then why do we need God? Right? And in a society that continues to put God on a shelf and not in our hearts, we have to boast in our weakness. We have to. That's my encouragement to myself, is if I'm just walking around talking about how great I am and how prepared I am and what I've done to get here, what glory does that give to the Lord? And I'm a first generation Christian. And so I've been ostracized from my siblings, and that's hard for me. But like going through the book of Revelation, and Pastor Johnson talked about it yesterday, at the end, God comes to our defense. He says that he loves us, and everyone that has persecuted us, they don't win. And so that's my encouragement. We were just talking about how the sermon mentioned that we live in a culture that's opposed to God. And I'm going to directly quote something that Pastor Johnson said. He said, "Listen, family, we've got a problem. The church today is asking God to get us out of this world, but Jesus is actively praying that we would stay in this world. This world needs the church. Your community needs you. Too many people are waiting for their rapture moment and forsaking their everyday moments to live loud for Jesus." Whew. What? Like, that convicted me. As encouraging as the message was, he talked about not letting two of the open doors that Jesus gives us, the door of salvation and the door of opportunity, and that opportunity to share. So how can we as the church shine brighter in this environment?
I think so. It's so funny because I think that part of it is not getting weary in the fight, because I think about even in the statement you made a second ago where it's like, I just want to be raptured. I think some of that is like, you just kind of grow weary when you're fighting the good fight and you feel like you're carrying this weight that we're really not supposed to carry. But again, when we're trying to do things in our strength, when really we should be doing it through God's strength, it can feel heavy and it can feel like, okay, I just want to check out now. Like, I feel like I've done my part, Lord.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's so many different things we can be doing to stay grounded and to stay strong. And so much of it, you talk about being in your word and being intentional with being in biblical community, really being connected to the church and not just showing up once every blue moon, because we are in a battle, right? And I mean, in a lot of ways, the battle has been won, but I think we have to arm ourselves and prepare ourselves before we go into war, right? Because we don't want to show up unprepared. The enemy isn't taking a break. He's not resting. And so we can't afford to do that either. And so while there are plenty of moments where I have felt like, all right, I don't know if I want to really fight this war anymore. Like, I think I'm good. I think what has kept me grounded really is having biblical community, having those key people in my life that I can talk to during difficult seasons, being in my word, even just taking a moment to just worship and relish in how amazing God is. Like sometimes we just need that reminder of how powerful he really is in the midst of everything that we're trying to battle. So
That's good.
that's my thoughts.
What does that look like for you? Sorry to double down,
No, you're
but
good.
what does that look like for you? Because you talked about having biblical community,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the whole us for no more mentality. And it's great and it's strengthening and it's encouraging.
Yeah.
But being a light to those that don't know Jesus,
Mm-hmm.
what does that look like for you?
That's really good. I think on some level, it's ministering to my neighbors because my neighbors aren't saved. And so finding times where we can have fellowship with them in authentic ways. And, we're not trying to force religion on them, but just finding authentic ways where we can relate and serve and love on people. I think people can experience the goodness of God just through pure acts of love and kindness, but it does require that extra intentionality. Like you said, getting outside your comfort zone, maybe talking to someone who's not the same race as you or someone who doesn't think like you or come from the same background as you. Like I feel like there's a lot of opportunity and sometimes we just let it pass or sometimes we're too nervous.
Yeah.
I used to laugh when Pastor Dennis would talk about how he would be ministering to people on the plane. And I'm like, that's bold. Because when I get on the plane, I'm like, headphones on, book. I don't want to, don't talk to me. Oh, what do you do for a living? I was like,
That's
Pastor
real.
Dennis is a real one because, but think about the opportunity that we're passing up. And again, acts of kindness, like, okay, I see a crying baby on a plane. Maybe I ask the mom, like, hey, would you like help with your crying? So I think there's just so many opportunities that we let slip by because we're just caught up in our own world.
That's good. That's good. I love it. What about you guys?
The question was, how do we continue to live as a light to the world? Is that what you said?
Yeah. How do you share
how do we do that
the
more?
opportunity to share the gospel?
Yeah.
How do you do that in a world that honestly rejects the Lord? How do you do that?
I think something I was thinking about earlier was just like this, and something I've been praying about, I think, for the last couple months is just like this awareness, like wanting to be made more aware of not just the Holy Spirit, but definitely being made more aware of the Holy Spirit, but also just aware of the people around me. I think we live in a generation where we're constantly looking down, looking on our phones, looking at like our life, looking at like what we have to do. And I think if we can look up and look around and be able to not just see that there are people, but like see the people for who they are and try to see them how the Lord sees them.
Yeah.
As like, this is a person.
Yeah.
And even more so, Jesus saying that's a person I died for. Being able to see people like that, I think will change our perspective. And then also having in mind, like, this is going to sound maybe a little bit like, I don't know, it might sound a little bit weird, but like having death in mind or having the end in mind. Yeah. Not that we're not saying, okay, Jesus, like, beam me up, but we have the end in mind of like, okay, like the time will come where we're not going to be on earth anymore.
Yeah.
And so we need to know, like, we need to be aware of one, like our time on earth is going to come to an end, but also like there's the rest of eternity as well. So like being aware of heaven, being heavenly minded, and being able to bring people into that as well. And not trying to like force it on them by any means, but I think being able to just share that piece even that we have about like, okay, we know what's going to happen at the end. We know where we're going to go. But in the meantime, being able to share that with other people as we go. I think that's a huge way we could do that.
So I sat in all 3 messages yesterday, and Pastor Johnson only said this in one of the services, but I actually wrote it down because it really stuck with me to what you're saying. He said, we need to think more about heaven, or else we're going to try to build heaven here. And we're going to try to build our kingdom here. And so I love what you said, because it's so true. If we look up and actually focus on eternity, the urgency to talk to the people in our sphere of influence, it grows. Yeah. What about you, Q?
Man, that's so good. I think he said that in the 9 a.m. I was thinking about that. I was like, man, that hit me. For me, the one thing that comes to mind when it comes to like continuously being a light is I think about like a lot of brothers I went to high school with, and it's like when I got saved, I was like, I'm leaving my old life behind and left everyone. Yeah. I didn't look back at all, and I was like, and then I've been saved for about
That's really good. Yeah. Do you ever find that when you do step back into those old relationships that weren't based around Jesus, that they either judge you, or for me, like I said earlier, I'm a first generation Christian. I had family and friends tell me in my first couple of years of following Jesus, oh, this is just a phase. You'll grow out of it. Wow. Yep. And I still remember that vividly. And I mean, I've been walking with the Lord for 15 years now, but those words really stuck with me. So has that happened with you?
It happened. Actually, very, very close member of my family said the same words.
Really?
It was like, the exact words that they said to my mom was like, when is he going to grow out of that phase? And I was like, I was 20 years old. It hit me hard. Yeah. And I think for a long time, I was just offended by it. Mm-hmm. Since I've been back, over time, I will say that those words that were spoken, I mean, I guess God got the glory because I never turned. It wasn't a phase, what I'm saying? Like it was, like I legit was, I got like a dose of love dropped in me, and I'm just changing everything that I do. But no, like the friendships that I go, like these high school friendships that I go back to, man, it's almost like I think we're more judgmental than they are. Yeah. I feel like received, loved. Like I feel like I'm more appreciated by them than I am in the church sometimes. It's kind of crazy. Yeah. But no, they receive me like we were high school buddies, and we just now connected, and we're back on like the same level. Like no time was ever lost. And they do not disrespect, like, because I used to smoke, I used to drink. They do not disrespect me in that way. They will go somewhere else and smoke. They will do so. They will not invite me to certain parties. They will take me out of group chats immediately. I got one right now. It just happened yesterday where one of the friends, he threw me in a group chat, and then my other friend, he immediately like reprimanded him and was like, dude, don't put him in there. Oh. It was like, so I was like, but this is the type of love that I get from them. And so I'm like, man, I need to learn how to treat people from their book, because I feel like I've been far more on the religious side than I have been on the love side. And so for me, that's the experience I've been in. That's good. With the friends. Yeah.
That's good to be able to identify that in yourself.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm a whore. I suck. I tell you that. Day one. I suck, man. You don't. God is working on me, but man, I could do a lot better.
I mean, in our weakness, He's made strong, right?
And that's the point. That's the point. See, this is why you do what you do. All right, cool.
That's funny. I have also found that just the way that I walk through the trials of life has been, for me, because I have the same experience. All my friends growing up weren't Christian, my family, all of that. And so them seeing the way that I respond to trials. And you heard Pastor Johnson talk about yesterday that the Church of Philadelphia was plagued by earthquakes. And so it was constantly a city that was shaken. And so much so that some of the people didn't even live in the city because they were scared that buildings were going to crush them. So they would live out in the wilderness and then come in for business. And I'll be honest, some days I feel like I'm playing a really bad game of Jumanji because, last week we had hurricanes. This week we've got biolabs exploding. What's next? Locusts? What are we doing here? And I just feel like I'm one wrong roll
the
away
dice.
from just being sucked into quicksand? That was my biggest fear as a kid. But so in a world that there is constant trial and sickness and addiction and all of that, what have you done to stand firm in your faith, and how has that impacted the people around you?
I'll jump in on this one. I didn't know that I was having this impact on this person. I'll never forget. I was like going through a tough, depressive time, and I get a text from my student. I used to lead in the youth ministry here, and I get a text from my student, and they just hit me with like about 6 messages of just encouragement, like the things that I've done in their life. I guess they were like near death, or they were going to commit suicide. And something I said or did caused them, and they were literally like, "You're the reason I'm here today," and stuff like. And now this is me. I'm on my bed. I'm laying on my bed, depressed, just completely done with it. And they sent this message at that exact time. And so when I think about like, what have I done? I feel like I just be going through experiences the same as other people, but my response is different. And my dad said this to me one time. We were just talking the other day, and he's like, "Life is about reactions." He's like, and I was like, "Huh?" He was like, "Yes, the way you react to things." And I think there's something in that where it's like, I've been able to weather these storms because I go to God. That's the first thing I do is like, "God, I'm falling apart." And there's something in that. And I don't know all the deep spiritual things behind it, but I know something's there, and it's speaking volumes to other people who are observant. Everybody's always watching you. You're being watched, if you know it or not. And I think that for my student, when they sent me that message, I was like, whoa, I didn't even know you were watching me. I didn't even know I did anything to help you. And that is where I'm like, well, he's moving through everything I'm doing. So
I love that.
Yeah.
Love that. Thank you for sharing that. That's
I ain't mean to get touchy and deep, but
No,
I was like,
that's
man, that
good.
message was like, she picked me up off the ground and she didn't even know it.
yeah.
And I didn't know I picked her up off the ground at some point. So it was helpful.
That's so
beautiful.
good.
Yeah.
I love that. It came full circle.
Mm-hmm.
That's really cool.
That's awesome.
What about you guys?
I think something, I don't know. I think something that the Lord's been teaching me in the last little while is like just the simplicity of abiding and the beauty and the power in that. Because it's not like we sometimes look at abiding as it's like, oh, like I'm gonna do it, like I'm gonna abide, and it's like it's not really like an exciting thing to do. Like I heard somebody put it like, you're not just gonna like, if you're excited and you're like, oh, I'm gonna watch this tree abide, like
Right.
you'll probably get bored of it after a few
Right.
minutes
Right.
because it's just watching it exist, But I've learned even just like in my trying and failing, and then trying again and trying again, that the more that you abide with the Spirit, the more you get the fruits of the Spirit.
Yeah.
And especially in a time of chaos and everything is shaking, really being able to lean on the peace of the Holy Spirit that surpasses all understanding.
Yeah.
And so like, I don't know, in situations where it feels like everything is falling apart, being able to like unexplainably have peace when there's turmoil in family or the world feels like it's falling apart, like us as the church being able to have peace and carry ourselves with peace and with love and grace and all the fruits of the Spirit. Like, I think that is what people will notice, and people will be drawn to that.
Oh yeah.
Or they'll be like, how do you have that? I
I
need
want
that.
that.
Like, I want that. I need it. I think that's a huge way we could do that.
That's good. I love that. I love that you didn't focus on the doing. You focused on the being. And that's something that I know I'm a busybody, and I want to do and do and do. And God doesn't call us to that. I mean, not that we don't need to do. Obviously, there is work to be done. The field is white for the harvest, But more than that, He wants us to just be.
Yeah.
That's good.
I
love
think
that.
I feel like Christianity, at least how I've grown up in it, it feels like there's always something to do. There's always like more you have to do. And I feel like that's more a spirit of religion than it is of like true relationship with Christ.
Yeah.
And so being able to kind of like almost like take that off and be like, okay, I'm just going to be with you, Lord. And like, I'm just going to sit with you. And like, I want you to like download these things into me. And it's hard. Like I am so distracted in everything I do, but especially when I try to just sit still and listen, not say anything, not write anything, not read anything. But I feel like so refreshed after coming out of that. And it's like I said earlier, it's hard to explain it really, but what comes out of that is so beautiful. Just being able to be with the lover of our soul.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love that.
That's good.
How about you, Alex?
I think one of the harder things that I've had to navigate in my journey of following Jesus is how do we handle trials and disappointments and grief and all of those things. And you find yourself in these very awkward conversations with the Lord where it's like, okay, God, but you're a good God and all these things are happening. And I feel like one of the things that has been interesting to see in the stage of life, I have a toddler now. And when I got married, I noticed that my husband and I would like respond to trials and difficulties in different ways. And, you know, if you're married, it's almost like having a mirror that you're looking at all the time because it kind of exposes things that God is trying to like draw out of you or work on through you. And so that was one of those things was like, okay, I don't think I respond to trials very well. And now that I have a daughter, I'm like, oh, she's watching me.
Yeah.
She's learning, she's observing the same way that we observed and learned from our childhoods. And so now I'm having to be super conscious and intentional because the things I teach her, I want those to be the things of the Lord. I want her to see things with a godly perspective. And I want her from a very early age to learn how to navigate those things with grace and with confidence and not just resort to some of the habits that I had, you know, just like, it's hard to describe, but I feel like my approach was kind of a glass half empty. Especially when I first came to Jesus. Like it was just having to kind of deconstruct and unlearn some of those things and continuously put my faith and my trust in the Lord and knowing that despite what's happening, hurricanes, wars in Gaza, missiles, despite all of it, God is in control and he has a plan and not getting so discouraged by the things that we can't control. And so that's something I want to be very intentional about for her because you talked about like influence. She's 2, right? So, you know, we're still in the early stages of it, but I'm just super intentional about wanting to make sure that she grows up having a very kingdom perspective on life.
Man, it's so important. I love that. One of the pastors on staff one time said to me when she first became a mother, that one of the hardest things for her was not to go out and preach and lead groups and things like that, but she felt the Lord call her to the ministry in her lap, which was her babies. And I just, there was so much freedom in that. And I love that. I love that.
It's a special season and it flies by, as you know.
I do. And yes, it does. Man, well, thank you guys so much for this conversation. It was so good. We have one church left this week. I'm a little scared. But it's not meant to scare us. It's meant to prepare us. So let's keep going. But thank you guys for your time today.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Of course.